Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Thanks for joining us this evening. We have an amazing show tonight. It is campaign season. Although it's summertime, things are still heating up out there in the campaign arena. I have two amazing guests this evening, both running here in the Fairfax area, and we're going to get to them both. But first, I want to remind everyone, register to vote, vote early, get your friends to vote. It's an important time here in Virginia. My first guest is Chris Falcon. He is the Democratic nominee candidate for the Clerk of Court here in Fairfax County. We share similar backgrounds. His family is from Peru, Ecuador. He went to school not knowing English, so interested to hear how he coped with that and overcame a lot of challenges that first immigrants have in this country. Also, he has a background in the area. His family's here in the area. So without further ado, Chris, Mr. Falcon, thank you so much for joining us.
Cesar, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Appreciate you making time. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, how you got here, and then we'll talk about the office.
Yeah, absolutely. So my story starts with my parents, Walter Falcon, Betsy Falcon. My dad is originally from Peru, and he came to this area in 1971. He originally lived in Washington, D.C. for a little bit. My mom actually came in 1968. So in the summer of 68, she came from Guayaquil, Ecuador, and settled in Washington, D.C. And they met at a wedding there and fell in love, got married, came to Fairfax County. So thank goodness they came here. But this is where the story of my brother, my older brother David, he's about 7.5 years older than me, and then I come along. And I just grew up in Falls Church. I grew up near Seven Corners. I don't live too far away from where I actually grew up, off of Annandale Road and Route 50 in Falls Church. And I had an amazing, all-American childhood growing up in Falls Church. But, my parents, they were old school. So growing up here, I learned about, values of their immigrant experience. And number one, that started with learning Spanish. So we only spoke Spanish in mi casa. Hablábamos solamente español.
Know that well. Yeah.
But it was great. I mean, I'm very fortunate to have my mom and dad live about 10 minutes away from me now. I'm married. My wife Jackie is an educator with the Fairfax County Public School System, and I have 3 kids: a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And I'm just blessed to have my folks live in Mantua, not too far away from where I am in Annandale. And I've had, I owe them so much. Whenever I'm out there and they're at events, it's actually a little hard to keep it together when I see them out in the crowd, because they sacrificed so much for me, my brother, and my sister when I was growing up.
Amen, brother. That, and you serve them well, right? You honor with what you've accomplished. The little I know of you. Oh, and I must disclose, I donated to your campaign. I love what you stand for. I hope the folks watching will certainly learn and appreciate what I learned. Absolutely. So growing up, speaking Spanish, then going into the public school systems, English. What was that like learning?
Well, that was an experience.
Yeah.
I give so much credit to the teachers and the educators at Pine Spring Elementary in Falls Church, because there was a little 4.5-year-old that was shaking like a leaf named Chris Falcon, who started there in the mid-late 80s, not knowing a lick of English. Right? My mom and dad taught me a little bit, but we were primarily fully Spanish speaking in my house. So I learned to say, "Hi, my name is Chris," and I also learned to say, "I have to go to the bathroom," so that I wouldn't get in trouble in school in that respect. But the educators were amazing at the Fairfax County Public School System. Amazing then, amazing now. And I just remember getting great assistance from them when it came to language, to the point that I finished kindergarten, and by first grade, I was speaking English fully and started reading. So bilingual and reading in English, not too bad. So thank you to the educators there.
Awesome, awesome. So appreciate you sharing that with us.
Sure.
So why are you running? why do this? I mean, it sounds like you have a great life, family, but what's driving this?
Great question. So I have been working at the clerk of the court's office down in Arlington County. So I travel down Columbia Pike every day, Monday through Friday, to go to my job. And I love it. I mean, I get to do this job, the clerk of the court, where you manage the operations at the county courthouse. But really what it is it's a customer service job, because there's people coming in all day long that are dealing with just such a huge variety of issues. Everything from, they have just been served with divorce papers, and they walk in and they're holding this document and they're like, I don't know what to do next. I don't have an attorney. I can't afford a lawyer. Or someone walks in and they've been served with an eviction notice on their door, and they don't have money for attorneys, so they come to the courthouse seeking help. People that, don't get me wrong, there's happy things that happen there too. It's where people come to get married and they get their marriage license. It's where they come when they record deeds, when they buy their first property or their second or third. It's where they petition to adopt a child. But there's a lot of very heavy things happening there too. And that's why I think it's so important that you get people in this office who have lived life experiences that can relate to the customers that are walking in. That can relate to the immigrant that's walking in and doesn't speak English, or has a little bit of a working knowledge of the English language. I mean, I speak Spanish almost every single day at my office, at the Circuit Court Clerk's office in Arlington. And that's a great thing. We should be proud of being in an area, in a region where we have customer service, dedicated public servants that speak multiple languages, that look like the county that they're serving. So I drank the Kool-Aid long ago. I love this job. I live to do it, and now I want to do it where I was born and raised and I've lived my whole life. I want to bring that customer service, that love of providing access to the justice system, to the people, to Fairfax County. I think we could do wonderful things in this county, but we need to be out in the community more. We need to be getting out of that courthouse. So, I mean, I got a lot of plans on things that we can do to be more proactive in the community. But that's why I'm running. It's truly to help the little guy. I mean, I'm a big fan of fighting for the underdog. When I was in active law practice, litigating cases, I always loved the cases that other people thought were a loser. No one's going to win that case, right? I was like, no, it's going to be a challenge, but let's give it a go. I had friends that told me, oh, well, they know that you like to try cases, so the insurance companies are going to give you a good offer on this one. I'm like, well, it's not going to be enough. Let's go to trial and find out what happens. So I enjoyed that, but I really, really like public service, because I think you can do a lot more in a community. You can really scale some of these things, but it's an ability to do good and provide customer service, and also do, I think, community building too, because that's really what it's about. It's being able to serve in a position where you're showing the community that you care about them, that even if you're someone that may not be able to afford high-powered lawyers, you're still going to come into a court system that treats you with compassion and respect, and that's what I love. I mean, that's what I wake up wanting to do every day.
So why isn't that happening now? Because those seem like really basic, service and humane things to do. Why is that not happening now, you think?
So don't get me wrong. I think the line staff that's at Fairfax, they're great. Like, I have dealt personally with people that are at the counters.
Issue, right?
I think it's a change. It's a difference in philosophies, right? I think the current leadership, they've been there a long time, and I don't think they're necessarily thinking about equity gaps in the system. I don't know that they necessarily have seen them. I've been out in the community. I've served on the Fairfax County Human Services Council for a number of years. We did listening tours all around the county, and I've seen the huge disparities that there is in South County, out in Herndon, Reston, here right in Falls Church, actually, without going too far, in Annandale, where I live. So, I mean, when I see a government office, I'm immediately thinking one Fairfax. How can we operationalize our countywide equity policy? How can we make sure that we're thinking about everyone's needs? Does this customer have transportation to get to the courthouse? Do they speak English? Do they have funding for this? and then finding ways to connect them with services. I think the cell phone is one of the great equalizers, because a lot of people have cell phones, but they may not have a vehicle. So is there a way to provide them a copy of a record or a service or a virtual appointment using their phones? I mean, these are the things I think we need to be thinking about more. So to answer your original question, I think it's a difference in philosophy, and also my lived life experience, I think, makes me see those issues. And in the law, we call it issue spotting. I believe I'm very good at issue spotting. And I also, as you've heard, I'm a big fan of customer service. So I have personally trained staff for a number of years. I've been at that in the office, in the circuit court clerk's office, for 9 years. I've been managing there 9 years, but my management time comes from before that. I've managed in law firms as well. So I think belief in mission will translate to the constituents and the customers.
You're talking about major transformational change, right? And for me, asking the basic question, well, why do we do this, or why are we doing it this way? And when the response from the institution is, well, we've always done it that way. It's like, to me, that's the most, not only frustrating, but it tells me we have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely, and I get that response a lot when I talk about what I think is a basic right, which is access to your own case information. My opponents doesn't necessarily believe that that's a right. I don't understand how someone is able to defend themselves in a case if they can't even find their own case information. I had someone contact me last weekend who wanted information about a case that they had going on in the Fairfax Circuit Court, and I had to tell them, I'm sorry, it's not available. I don't subscribe to the pay system that Fairfax currently has to see your case information over the weekend. You're going to have to wait until Monday morning and either call the clerk's office or physically go down there to look at a file. This is the only county in Virginia that is currently doing that to its residents, charging them for their own case information. That's one of the things I intend on stopping in Fairfax. It's, to me, limiting people's ability to represent themselves. It's just also a major access to justice issue when it comes to criminal cases too. A lot of public defenders, court-appointed attorneys rely on free access to someone's case information. And I also want to be clear about this. I'm not talking about private information. I'm talking about the public information every other county provides its residents. Case numbers, tied party names, and hearing dates. Those are currently not free in Fairfax. I'm going to change that.
Awesome. And I hope you do, because we're going to get into what you're going to do and how you plan on doing it in the next segment. So folks, please stay with us. I told you you'd be impressed with Chris here. So come back after the break.
It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
Oh, Dad, wait till you see the bike we got for Jake.
Hearing loss happens gradually with age, making it easy to ignore. Yet most older Americans aren't getting their hearing tested. Untreated hearing loss can keep your loved ones from enjoying what they cherish most.
Dad, can you hear me?
Don't let that happen. Speak up about hearing loss. You'll be glad you did.
You can't buy a best friend. You can love them, pet them, care for them, whether they want you to or not. You can take a picture, you can jump, yell, you can fly to the moon, travel the world, or just stay in bed. You can't buy a best friend like that, but you can adopt one. 'Cause we're connected.
Cook foods to the right temperature using a food thermometer. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Thanks for coming back. We're here in Studio C with my guest, Chris Falcon. He is the Democratic candidate for the Fairfax County Clerk of Court. Sir, thanks for coming back.
You bet.
Before the break, we were talking a little bit about the issue you're describing regarding information being made available. So what's the issue that you see out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me start foundationally. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, in the circuit court system, currently every single county except for Fairfax County participates in something that's known as the Virginia Online Case Information System. That's a public website that's run by the Office of the Executive Secretary of the Virginia Supreme Court. And it allows residents in every county except for Fairfax to go and check their case information. If they have a divorce, if they're involved in a motor vehicle accident case, if they have any type of civil matter, any type of criminal matter, to go on that public website and find their case information. And they can find it by searching under their name, searching under a case number. This is public information. And the only things that show up in there are what is legally known as public information, not private information, mind you, not confidential data, but it's names of parties, it's case numbers, it's the names of the documents that have been filed, like a complaint, a motion, a hearing notice, and then most importantly, I believe, it has the hearing information for upcoming hearings so that people can find out what their hearing date is, and what courtroom they have to be in tomorrow. And in Arlington County or in Prince William County, if you have a court date coming up tomorrow, you can actually go on that website right now, live, and find out what courtroom you're going to be in. In Fairfax County, you can't do that because
Why is that?
So the Fairfax County Circuit Court Clerk's Office has their own system. They are the one that doesn't believe they need to be on the Virginia Supreme Court system because they believe they're too big. It's not true. There's other large jurisdictions that participate in this. Prince William County, Virginia Beach. Yes, they're about half the size, a little less than half the size, but this system can accommodate the size of Fairfax.
Collectively, it sounds like it has more.
Yes, and I think it's providing a better service, actually, because it's allowing people to answer their own questions. You know how often someone calls the office where I work asking what their case number is? 0 times a day, because they can find it themselves. I don't think people give enough credit to the parties that are out there that are making ends meet and actually representing themselves because they don't have thousands of dollars for attorneys in cases. But they can work the system. They know how to find these things on their cell phone. And one of the things I like is we'll get a call sometimes in the office where I work down Columbia Pike, and I'll get a call from someone that's not an attorney saying, I looked up my case on the system, and I immediately smile when I hear that. And I was just wondering what this thing is called a demur. And a demur is a document, it is a pleading that's filed by one of the parties, and it's Latin. And so I explained to them that I can't provide them legal advice, but here are some resources to legal aid organizations they can speak with. But I just love it that we are able to provide that to people. And I think it's a major disservice to the people of Fairfax County, Fairfax City, town of Herndon, town of Vienna, because that's all part of the jurisdiction of the clerk of court here, that they don't have access to that same system or something better. And I think the reason it happened, and I know it is that the Fairfax County Clerk's Office invested a lot of money in their own system, and it doesn't have a free-facing side. It doesn't offer free service, free access to the case information. And recently, someone showed me that supporters of my Republican opponent were saying that I want to leak everyone's private information out there. That just simply couldn't be more false. I'm talking about public information, the same information the federal court system publishes for people to be able to see. They're not doing anything illegal, nor is every other county in Virginia. I think it's stubborn that the Fairfax Circuit Court Clerk's Office is not offering this to its residents. And I've been talking about this for over a year. So I've given them the opportunity to do the right thing and start offering free access. I'd like them to.
I just want to make sure, so a lot of jurisdictions in the Commonwealth are using this system.
Yep.
But somehow that's going to impact negatively the county residents that want the same information?
That was the argument I read.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a head scratcher for me too.
Yeah.
So I was talking about it to community groups out in Springfield over the weekend that don't believe the hype. It's
Right.
false.
Yeah.
And sometimes I even pull out my cell phone and I say, go to courts.state.va.us. You'll see every county listed on there except for Fairfax. We
Gotcha.
got to change that.
That's great.
You know, there's so much more we also have to do. We need to provide people with copies of their public records on their cell phones without forcing them to have to drive all the way to Fairfax City. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Fairfax City. Thank you, Mayor Catherine Reed. It's a wonderful place. But I don't want to take time away from my family and my kids if I don't have to. I would love to be able to request a copy of my public record on my cell phone, have it emailed back to me. There's other jurisdictions in the Commonwealth of Virginia that are doing that. Why isn't Fairfax?
Yeah.
And I see their budgets because it's public. It's not breaking the bank to offer someone a document request portal so they can get a copy of their deed.
I think you're touching on why you've captured a lot of people, because you're showing some leadership in an area that is trying to grow servicing the people that actually need it. You and I, yeah, it's an inconvenience to drive, but for some people, the luxury of time, they just don't have, right?
Absolutely. So I'm very fortunate and privileged. I can say that. I'm privileged enough to own my own transportation and to have a job that provides me with paid time off. Right. I've been meeting people my whole legal career, which is 15 long years now, who do not have those things. And you have to be considering them when you're making these decisions in these offices. So I want to meet them where they are. I've been down in South County and I've been meeting these folks and I've told them I've got some ideas on how we're going to start bringing the services out to you. I mean, Jackie Smith, the clerk in Prince William County, she's out there providing mobile service to different parts of the county and bringing the services out into the community. I think she's setting the standard right now on what's possible in this office, and we should all be looking to her and say, that's great. In Arlington, where I still work, we've started providing expungement clinics on weekends, and we have our next one coming up on September 30th. Expungement, for those people that may not know at home, is a law in Virginia that allows you to remove charges off your criminal record for things you were never convicted of. I don't think a lot of people out there realize that those charges stay on your record forever unless you proactively petition the circuit court to remove them through expungement. So in the county to the east, we started offering free expungement clinics so that people could go to a neutral third-party location. We started working with churches and go there and fill out paperwork and have the assistance of free attorneys. And there were nonprofits that were there to cover the filing fees for them. And we essentially offered Saturday pop-up service to our residents.
That's great.
So that's what I want to bring to Fairfax. We got to get out of that courthouse and start being out there,
Brother,
meeting
you're
people
preaching.
where they are.
That's the whole concept behind service, right? You have to, you can't expect people to come to you. And you know this, there's a lot of people that come to this area. They come from countries where government's a bad thing. A lot of folks are afraid to call the police. A lot of folks are afraid to engage with the government services. So you got to meet them. So bravo, man.
Amen.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, I've already put it out there. I want to be at the Coolmore Day. I want to be at community events. We should be tabling at these as the clerk of the court's office so people know what their rights are. Because this office is also about freedoms, right? Freedom to be out from under criminal charges that you got when you were 18 or 19 years old so that you can apply for a job and not have that thing come back and haunt you for something you were never convicted of. But we got to get out of that court and get moving, be out in the community more. I learned all this being on the Human Services Council in Fairfax County. I was very fortunate to be appointed by the Board of Supervisors to this Human Services Council in 2018. And when I got there, we immediately started doing listening tours all over Fairfax County to meet residents and ask them, what is the thing that's keeping you up at night? and access to the Health and Human Services system is what we were focusing on in those talks. But it's the same thing I'm talking about right now. It's about connecting people with services, connecting them with their records, for goodness sakes, connecting them with their case information. I mean, we're talking about case information that is not accessible right now. That, at its very basic, should be happening. I really hope that the current office does the right thing before this campaign is over and starts making proactive steps towards offering public information to the residents of Fairfax County.
Yeah, and the thing that again, it's a thing that I always point to. Fairfax, I think, County Public Schools have 120 some languages spoken in the homes. So communicating in as many languages, right?
Yeah, no, that's something I feel very strongly as. Obviously, I grew up not speaking the English language. It's my second language. So I'm a firm believer that the government offices here in Fairfax County should reflect the diversity of the county it serves. It should look like the people it serves. So I believe we need to offer language premium to our customer service, front-facing customer service jobs. I think it's a beautiful thing when you walk into an office in Northern Virginia and you see people providing customer service in multiple languages, not just Spanish. I'm talking Vietnamese, Korean, Arabic, Amharic. It's a great thing, and that's part of what makes Fairfax County so beautiful and welcoming for immigrant communities, but for all communities, for all people here.
Yeah, amen, because my mom spoke English. She could read it, but there was something about just reading it in her own language that just made it a little bit more easy to get through the process, right? And I think that's true for most people.
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's been a tough past couple of years for the immigrant community in the United States. And there is nothing that I love more when I'm at the counter, and sometimes I come up to the front counter at my job. I might be a manager, but if I see long lines, I jump up and I help out my staff. That's one of the things I look forward to offering the current Fairfax County Circuit Court Clerk's office. They're going to have a boss who's not afraid to jump up there, roll up his sleeves, and help people, okay? But I love the look of relief that comes on the face of someone when they see me, and they immediately speak to me in Spanish because they're like, ¿hablas español? And I'm like, claro que sí, ¿cómo le puedo ayudar?
Yeah, nice.
You know, that's how my parents taught me. And my love of public service absolutely began with my parents. You know, they got me into volunteering at a very early age. And you know this, volunteering is contagious. Once you start doing it and spreading the love, helping neighbors out, it's hard to stop, so.
Yeah, well, I tell you, you're an inspiration, sir. It's a pleasure to have met you again. And keep empowering those folks, because I think this office really needs someone like you to transform it to what the county needs. So whatever I can do, and folks out there, you've got the websites. Chris Falcon, Clerk of the Court candidate from the Democratic Party for here in Fairfax County. Please check him out. Sir, pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate
your time. And folks, we'll be back with our next guest. Thanks.
Nice going, Spencer. I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We? Go to the door, ask for the ball back.
Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtleback.
You're so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go. See ya. Remember me and your well.
Nice one. Some friends you are.
Keep smiling, keep shining.
Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's a matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about nothing very nice. Holy smile. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Only you can
prevent wildfires. Fire!
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Thanks for coming back. We're in Studio C here. It is still election season here in Fairfax County, Northern Virginia. My next guest, I think you may have met him the first time. And the reason I'm excited to have him back, because Saddam Salim pulled off an upset. He won against an incumbent in a primary in the Democratic Senate District of 37. And it was an upset. Full disclosure, I've donated to this gentleman. I believe he has the vision and the background to truly represent the district going forward. So please welcome my guest, Mr. Saddam Salim, candidate.
Thank you for having me again.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Full disclosure, I've donated to you.
Yeah, thank you, and I do appreciate that. I know, again, I'm Saddam Salim, and of course, this is Senate District 37th, which kind of goes from Oakton, Tysons, into the city of Falls Church, the city of Fairfax, and then whatever's in between in Fairfax County. And it was one of those things, somebody had to run, is what it seemed like. But, what was really great about this is my story about how I got here as an immigrant who
tell us please,
who experienced climate change back home, and then because of that we were essentially displaced. We had to find another home, and America was that home. But just when we thought, hey, this was our home, we lost the apartment because they sold that apartment to be turned into luxury condos in DC. And as I tell people the story about how I got to Virginia, is because of that. Me and my brother, we were sitting on the streets trying to figure out what's happening, and my dad's like, all right, we're going to Virginia, we're going to Falls Church. And since then, the summer of 2001, we have been in Virginia ever since then, with 1 year being in DC. But because of that, I learned affordable housing, what that meant. We lived in basements, people's couches, until we got Fairfax County's affordable housing. Through that process, they introduced us to affordable health care. In Seven Corners, there used to be a health clinic where my parents used it. It took them 3 to 4 months just to get the appointments. But because of that, my mom found out that she had some issues when it came to her health related to reproductive health. As a result of that, she needed emergency surgery. Thankfully, because of that clinic, because of how affordable it was for minority communities and the accessibility, she's alive today. And again, going back to that same issue, because of that, I had to go to community college, which I recommend a lot of people going, because you do the 2-year guaranteed, then you get to Mason, whichever university you want. And I came out with essentially 0 student loan debt, and have a master's in public administration and finance. And I tell people that story because there's affordable housing, healthcare, public education, things that Democrats have fought for. And that's why in this race, I also will fight and have been fighting for those same issues that my constituents cared about.
That is a uniquely American story. Thank you for sharing that. I learned something. I thought I knew a lot about you, but I appreciate you sharing that. So your background, so why get into this race now? Why'd you get into it? Because I, like a lot of people, we supported your idea, supported your candidacy and what you represented, but a little bit leery of it. Can this guy pull it off, right? I mean, so why? And
I tell this to a lot of folks. I made the decision on December 24th when my niece was born. I sat in the hospital. I saw my sister-in-law, my sister, and my mom, and then a new generation, a member of the new generation, my niece. And that was the moment it hit me. I realized that they all had different rights. and some of their rights are being rolled back, and no one's going to be watching out for that. And I asked myself, can I count on my delegate? Yes. Can I count on my Senate person? And it ended up, the answer was, I really had to question that. That was the moment I started to think about, what can I not, what can I count on my current senator versus who I'm going to get because of redistricting. And a lot of that, where I really needed my senator, it wasn't there. And as I looked through that, other people had the same feelings. Other people were concerned about where, my former opponent stood and has stood in different issues. And when I looked through that, and I kind of went through everything, and I said, this is a 20-year incumbent. He's been in the House of Delegates. He's been a senator for the last 16 years. Is it doable? I even thought to myself, it's not doable. But everyone else complained about the fact that this was somebody who's very conservative for this specific area. But when I look back, no one stepped it up to the plate to say, hey, I'm going to run. It was that courage that was missing, and I took it up on myself to say, hey, I'm going to do this. Whether I get the funding or the support, that is a different story, and most of it I didn't. But I rolled up my sleeves. I went door knocking. I talked to voters. I sat at local mom and pop coffee shops doing meet and greets. The first one I did, no one showed up. The second one I did, a mom and a kid showed up. Third one I did, 3 people showed up. And that kept adding on and on. And we probably did more than 20 of those just to get voter engagement. And during those meet and greets, I didn't talk about the issues I was going to fight for. I asked them, what are they looking for in their next senator? And they talked about preventing gun violence. They talked about reproductive rights. And they talked about housing. Housing is an issue whether you're in the rich part of Virginia or the poor part, or if you're in the areas where there's farmers. That is a universal Commonwealth problem. And whether you're in Tyson's or you're in Falls Church, everyone talked about those 3 issues. And we ran with that, and we showcased my opponent's voting record to let people know that, hey, this is his voting records. He'll come talk to you. At the end of the day, if you pick him over me, I'm happy with that because I showcased the difference, and that's what we did in this campaign. And it really came down when you look at the final numbers. A lot of people will see this, is that my opponent spent about $1 million, a little bit, right over $1 million, and I spent $192,000, where 40 of that was in-kind contributions. So you can really tell, I spent $15 a vote versus my opponent who spent more than $100. And at the end of the day, the grassroots power, neighbors came out, my sisters came out, my brother came out, you name it. My high school folks came out. I graduated with a lot of folks. They went out of the area. They came back to the area just to say they helped, someone like me get elected because of the relationships we have had over the years.
Oh, why do you think this Senate seat was represented that way for so long?
I think over time, if you look back 10 years ago, maybe 2 decades ago, the demographics, when you look at AAPI community, when you look at the Hispanic community, when you look at the minority community, that has significantly shifted. The new district, Senate District 37th, it has Eden Center. You look at Mosaic, those 2 places in this district, and then you look at Tyson's. The number of businesses that are here today compared to 10 years ago, completely different. Including my own community, the Bangladeshi Americans, there are more of us now than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So I think the build up to the community and the diversity of this area, where it does require a senator, a sitting senator or a delegate or whoever to change with the district. And when you don't do that, that's when people realize, wait a minute, my voices are not being heard. And that's what I heard at the door, is that, oh, we've been trying to call our senator, or we had some concern, but we're not hearing back. And I, instead of trying to say, oh, I will, come back and talk to you, I just asked them, what are their concerns? I went to the Tysons and the Pimmit area, and their concerns was, there's a pipeline that's going to go through their neighborhood. What are you going to do as a senator? And I went out there, talked to them, and said, I will fight for you. What do you need? I didn't ask or say that I'm an expert, I'm going to solve this. I just asked them, what do they need? And they really needed somebody to listen. They really needed somebody to say, hey, I will stand there right next to you and fight for you.
Amazing, because I think it's a real easy sort of comparison. Here's the party platform values. Yeah. Where do you line up, right? I mean, and I think that was, for me, I heard there was misalignment there for a long time.
Yep.
So I think that was one of the other reasons you caught on fire,
yep.
to say right, the analogy. You caught with people.
Yeah, and again, at the end of the day, whether my opponent aligned with the party or there was some disconnect, for me, it was never about, hey, one party or the other. It was more about, these are democratic values that got me here. Yeah. The community's invested in me. 20 years ago, some supervisors sat at a board and said, we're going to fund affordable housing, and then I was a benefit to that.
Amen.
Somebody sat there and said, hey, we're going to fund these local clinics so that communities of color can get the health care they need. Yeah. I was the benefit to that. So those are investments that Democrats have made, and I was the return on that investment, and I want to be able to give that back to not only the party, but also to the communities that raised me, which is the county, the Falls Church area. And when I look at that and think about it, it's not just my story. It's not that I benefited. It's thousands of other people that benefited, and we still need those services. We still need affordable housing. We still need transportation. We still need health care. That seems to be another issue. And somebody has to roll up their sleeves and do the work.
What did you learn just regarding the campaign from when you first started to where you are today? What was the one thing that stuck out that you went into it that maybe you thought was one way, or any epiphany along the way?
So I really learned, I have to be honest, I learned a lot. I learned that as a candidate, you really have to go knock doors. You really have to talk to the voters. Mm-hmm. And I also learned the fact that you have to have a great team. I had a great campaign manager, I had a great deputy campaign manager, and a field director. And, they were on point. They were everywhere that we needed to be, an hour early and left an hour late. They showcased that this is how hard, we're gonna have to work hard. So that's something I learned, is that everyone in the campaign was all in. And the other thing I learned is that not everyone's gonna come out and say, hey, we got you, we're gonna support you. And you can never take that personal. The moment you take that personal, you lose sight of what the end goal is, and which was to win the primary. Mm-hmm. I personally never took it personally. I just went in and said, you know what? I'm gonna go knock 10 more doors because I got one no. And when I come back after the primary, I'm just gonna come and say, hey, now I am here. How do we work together? Instead of trying to go back and say, oh, you didn't support me, or something else happened. That is the approach I took, is that we have to sort of let things go and say, hey, let's move forward. At the end of the day, my job is going to be now to make sure I help local governments, make sure I help my constituents, make sure I talk to folks. And that is one thing I learned, is that I have to be able to listen to my constituents, to the mayors, the council members, to the supervisors, and the city folks.
Awesome. I know we've got a lot more to talk about on the next segment, so let's pause there. And folks, I'm excited about this one. I hope you are as well. So come back after the next segment here.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. Already posted it.
I got a crick in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. But if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more.
big responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. I know, it's huge.
And the salary.
Oh my god, yes.
Right?
I mean, like, I was about to move in with my parents, and right before, so this saved me.
I really believe in you, you know?
Thank you. It's nice to hear that from someone.
These are cool. Did you, what did you...
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Hi folks, Cesar here. Welcome back to Studio C with my guest, Saddam Salim. He is the Democratic nominee for the State Senate District 37 here in Northern Virginia. Sir, welcome back. Thanks for hanging around. So let's talk about housing. I mean, I think you mentioned it before. Huge issue in the area. What are your thoughts? What are some of the things you think you can get accomplished?
Yeah, no, so housing, as many people have found out through the campaign, I had to use public housing. My family did until we finally afforded to purchase our own. And that goes into the fact that, we have teachers, firefighters, EMTs, frontline workers is what we talked about over the last 4 years because of the pandemic. But 9 out of 10 of those people cannot afford to live in the same area that they work in. Yeah. And that's an issue because, you're gonna have to, they spend an hour just driving here to work and then they have to spend another hour going back. So they miss a lot of time with their family. And our thing is, we can't just build homes, we just don't have enough space. So we have to relook at a lot of the commercial real estate and look at how do we allow localities the ability to turn those into residential. And it doesn't have to be the whole building, it could be a mixed use. And we have to be able to not only fund that through the state side, but also allow localities special ways of raising the revenue, raising taxes. And right now, because a lot of folks are working from home, there's a lot of buildings that are empty. And if we look at the commercial side and when we look at the bankers, they may be interested in saying, hey, how do we convert it as well? Because these are sitting empty. They're not collecting any rent on it right now. So those are some of the things we would look at. And of course, there are some neighborhoods where we do have to preserve the way it is, given its historical value, along with the aesthetics of those towns and cities. But we can't just say, hey, we're going to build 6,000 units. There's just not enough land for that.
Yeah. And also the challenge is if you designate this lot to mixed use, how do you help the developer allocate those affordable units, right? There's got to be something either state level or county level and town level, because those developers are benefiting from years of hitting a margin, hitting profits, not caring about these affordable units that are required, right?
Yep. And that's where we have to look at incentivizing not only developers, but also the local governments. If there's, the permit process is taking a lot longer, how do we as state fund that with criteria so that the permit process is reduced down to, let's say, 6 months rather than a year? Because if it's a year, then that gives the developers an opportunity to add additional cost onto the cost of housing. This way, it allows us to control not only the price of those units, but also the cost to put it together when it comes to construction, or when we're redeveloping a lot of the commercial space into residential, it sort of shifts the control over to local government. They have a greater oversight, and I think that's something that the state level should be able to set on, and if they don't, then you have every jurisdiction doing their own thing without state authority.
Yeah. It seems dollars always seem to drive that. Education, it seems to be under attack across the country, but also here in the Commonwealth. Your thoughts on education?
Yeah, I mean, we have Governor Glenn Youngkin, who's appointed conservative board members at universities across the Commonwealth, where the board does control the rise of cost of tuition. They set what is taught and what isn't taught. So I think there's an attack on our higher ed from the conservative side, along with the fact that we have millions of dollars that are missing that are not accounted for. And right now, with the latest study that came out last week, our school systems are below the national average when it comes to funding. And right now the budget amendment is not completed in Richmond. That's because our governor wants to showcase that he wants to run for president. He wants to be Florida essentially. How does he better DeSantis is what he's looking at. But at the same time, it's putting real Virginians at risk. It's putting students at risk. It's putting kids that are disabled, that have to go to school, that are missing those resources. So that's where they're going to try to attack our public education and say, hey, it's not working. As a result of that, we should look into vouchers. We should look into the other side, the privatizing education. And I think that's one of their goals.
Let's only educate the wealthy kids. Is that a good formula for success? I don't think so.
No. And as you can tell, I came from Fairfax County as a 10-year-old boy, came here, did not speak a single word of English, learned everything, and I don't have an accent. Most people will say, oh, you speak perfect English. And I say that's because I grew up here, learned it from Fairfax County public education, the teachers that took care of me throughout the years, to the point where I actually knocked on doors during this campaign season and ran into two of my teachers.
Awesome, really?
Yeah, both my high school biology teacher and peer mediation teacher at Fall Church High School. And at first they were like, I think there was a kid I had in my class that was named Saddam, do you know him? And then I just say, oh, it's me. And they just open up the door, came out, and they say, hey, we've been actually talking about you for the last couple of months, trying to tell our family and friends to vote for you, without realizing that it was the same person.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. I think it's a beautiful thing, and it didn't come out this way, but both our guests tonight, English was a second language growing up, and you all have done so well. So congratulations on that. Back to your issues. We talked about education, housing. Man, there's just like a ton out there. Reproductive rights. I mean, just
with Roe v. Wade being overturned, states now have the ability to set those standards. They have the ability to put forward bills. And one of my specific focus that I talked about is not only protecting reproductive rights and reproductive care, but also, when it comes to abortions, making sure that's available to everyone. But specifically, the maternal mortality rate. That's when moms after they give birth, the level of aftercare is very minimal. That some of them do die from that. That has been increasing over the years. Even with Governor Ralph Northam, when he had that program and his policies in place, our new governor that came in just didn't even pay attention to that. We don't want to get to a point where we're at 18, 20, 25% to say, hey, we should look at this. And that's an issue. No, we should be getting ahead of this and looking at California and other states where they did decrease the rate of maternal mortality rate by providing resources, by extending care, by including that in basic healthcare needs. So I think once if we just look at what other states have done, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can adapt what worked and what works best for our Commonwealth.
Gotcha. One of the things I grapple with are Democrats that don't believe there's a issue of gun violence and they don't support gun safety legislation. Your prior opponent had a record that was less than aligned with the Democratic Party. So how are you feeling about being able to be a stronger voice on that in Richmond?
So, I feel great. My opponent, in 2019, he voted against banning an assault weapon. That's when we had the trifecta, the opportunity to work out the details. That was the year. And then later on, he claimed that, he voted for one, but it was never going to pass. I think right now we have an opportunity to not only ban assault weapons, but also look at safety measures. Make it safe for public places, for movie theaters, for local high schools, for wherever there's a public place. We have to make sure that guns aren't walking around and people aren't taking them. And that's where I want to not only ban assault weapons, but look at safety measures. Look at the fact that how do we fund our sheriff's office so that they can focus on mental health and other things instead of trying to go out and prevent gun violence. So I think it's going to be a lot of work. I do want to introduce a lot of bills, and I think given the incoming number of new senators that are coming in versus the incumbents that may have not thought about this in the past, this is an opportunity where it's going to take a lot of time. I can't promise that we'll get it done the first session, but it is on my top priority is to prevent gun violence. And I don't want to hear about, hey, I don't want to do anything until after a shooting happens. I want to make sure we prevent it prior to that.
I appreciate that. That's a big issue for me as well. Our brothers and sisters in the LGBTQ community, they seem to be under attack as a unit all across the country.
Yep.
What can you do to help
and you know, I have talked to a lot of folks during this campaign. It's about making sure that they're safe. It's about making sure that they don't get discriminated. When they go to school, just like any other kid, they should feel welcomed. They should feel, you know, their teachers pay attention to them. They should feel that they're in a safe place. And you know, as somebody who's an immigrant who grew up here, I always went to school and I thought that was the safest place. I didn't care what my friends were, who they were, how they behaved. It was more about you're a kid, you're having fun, you're learning. So right now they're not getting that atmosphere with a lot of the teachers. You know, there was a hotline where they had to, you know, if the teacher said something different, somebody could report that versus if they didn't say anything to the parents. And for kids to be able to go through all that and still, you know, think about the positive things in life instead of suicide, that is what the goal is going to be, is to prevent a lot of that, is to make sure that they get the right help that they need from the state point of view, whether that's mental health or whether that's extra security, whatever they need. I want everyone to be able to walk around, not only, you know, in public places, but at subway, metro stations and all that, without feeling discriminated. Because, you know, when Trump was president, he did the Muslim ban. We had people from the LGBTQIA plus community come out and support us. And they said, hey, right now you're getting hated on, you're getting discriminated, we are behind you. This is where we come together and say, hey, they're getting discriminated, their rights are being stripped at left and right. And we have to be able to come together and say we do support their rights to not get discriminated, make sure that they have the care that they need.
Yeah, hey, look, I've attended many drag shows. I think they're the greatest thing. No one I know has been killed by a drag show, but yet gun violence persists as a major problem in our country. So I think there's a lot of fear out there that people just, I guess, thrive on and pit folks. But sir, congratulations again.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm containing myself, but I'm so proud to have known you. And
thank you, I appreciate it. And again, it's a testament of what people can do when they come together. And it has never been about me, it has always been about doing the right thing for the people.
Amen. Good luck to you, sir. And folks, thank you for joining us, and please check out our two guests this evening on the